Welcome to episode 35 of the David and Hillary Show.
And here we are in what we like to call our backyard paradise. We're doing that because today, for show and tell, we're going to share tips from the garden.
Then after that, we're going to go back to our conversation on freedom of speech. And this time we're going to talk about what happens when the government oversteps their boundaries.
Not good. It's going to be a great show. We're really glad you joined us.
Let's do this.
Well, here we are. It's late September in Tennessee, and what we have been noticing is that our azaleas, which are really pretty here by our back door, yeah, it needs to be painted. Don't look at the back door. Maybe we'll put that on another video. They're just getting leggy, and we had this happen once before. So let's go over here and I'll show you how we handled it in another part of the garden earlier this year. Okay, so these azaleas, we're doing the same thing. These are old-fashioned evergreen azaleas, and they're really pretty. We've got 3 of them here that have kind of grown up and grown together. They're 3 different colors. We like them here, but they were getting real leggy, and what happens is they get these long stems with green and buds up here and blooms, but they just look kind of funny. But really the best time to prune them is in the spring when they're done blooming, because they will set buds all throughout the rest of the year for next spring. And if you were to take a hedge trimmer and do a radical trim, a lot of times you won't get much in the way of blooming next year, especially if you do it late in the season. Well, kind of late in the season, so why are we going to do that over here? Let's go back over by the door and I'll explain what we're doing. Okay, so you can see these little buds that are set in here, and so obviously if I cut those off, then we're not going to have any of those flowers in the spring. But if we just cut the leggy parts back, what we'll be left with is good wood that has buds on it, and those should flower in the spring. The worst thing that can happen is if I trim, see, this is what I'm talking about. This is what the other ones over there looked like, and they just look kind of funny, and I'd rather keep them a little more compact. So if I cut this off, the bush may try to push new growth out this fall, and if it's not sturdy enough, it may not survive the winter very well, but it won't harm the entire bush. So that's a risk I'm ready to take. We could have trimmed these earlier this year, but we have just had a crazy year working in everybody else's yard, and now we finally, in late September, have a couple minutes to work in our yard. So what I don't want to do, I'm going to show you what I don't want to do, is cut those off like that. Because why? Because that looks dumb. Who wants those sticks just sticking up out of your bush like that? So what you're actually going to do is take it all the way down to where it connects with something else. And in this case, these guys go way down here. And so by cutting them way back, it kind of looks like they were never there. And that obviously is a much better aesthetic. I'm going to do the same thing over here. I debated whether to keep these. It's fun to have all these blooms, and that's what they did this past spring. But it's getting a little out of control. It's getting bigger than I want it to be. So we're going to take this. This is one of those hard things you have to do as a gardener. Do the hard thing, and in the end, you end up with a better product. But it's hard to cut away things that are producing and look good. So we got to get rid of this guy. And I think I'm going to do one more. I'm not going to go all the way back with him. We'll go right there. So if you come over here, you can see that the leaves that get more light are bigger, more traditional size, and these are smaller leaves. I assume that's because they're not getting quite as much light, maybe not getting quite as much water. But I think that they will grow out and it will eventually look good. The other thing I want to do, you can see our entry to the door back here is really getting narrow. It's hard to come out of here with nice clothes on and try to go to church or whatever and then just get drenched by plants that are soaking wet from irrigation or rain or whatever. I also want to be able to see our fun decorations down here that we've put pumpkins and gourds out. And so this is, again, maybe a hard thing because you go, well, I don't know, it's so healthy and it wants to grow. I want to let it do what it wants to do. Well, you got to be the parent that says, no, there's a line and you crossed it. So we have to deal with that. So I'm going to trim this back here. Again, I could trim it there, but I don't like the way that looks. If we do that, it's a little more attractive. I'm going to come back here and I'm going to take this one all the way back. I am going to trim this one back to here. I'm going to take this little guy out and I'm going to take this one back to here. And I've bought myself quite a bit more room, and hopefully you agree that it still looks pretty natural. You can see the pumpkins and the gourds a little bit better, and so we've kind of tamed our azaleas so that hopefully they'll bush out a little bit more and eventually have nice bushy blooms without getting real leggy and going crazy. So we'll see what happens in the spring. I'm not worried about the health of the overall bushes, but we'll see what blooms and what doesn't and where we go from here. This has been David with Franklin Ponds and Landscaping. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for all that you did to trim up that doorway. It looks so much better.
Well, I'm glad you like it. It was time. I mean, we've been wanting to do it all summer, right. And it's just, thankfully, we've been super busy. Of course, I mentioned our company name at the end there. We may double that and use it for promo on that too. We'll see, but
yeah, maybe other people have azaleas in their doorway.
Yeah,
it's a super specific request, but hey, we could do it.
I mean, we're here for you. That's what we do. Well, without any further ado, we're gonna go ahead and jump into part 2 of our conversation about freedom of speech.
All right.
Well, Hillary, in our last episode, we talked about freedom of speech, and we spent quite a bit of time, what is that, breaking it down. So just in the form of a very short review, I would like to read the First Amendment again.
Okay.
Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people to peaceably assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances.
Right. And so just as a reminder, freedom to criticize the government without the government punishing you for it, or political speech for or against a party, a candidate, or a leader, or their policies. In fact, this actually has the most protection as long as you're not inciting violence or simultaneously breaking other laws.
Right. So a big emphasis on having the right to say whatever you want about the government specifically, or about anything else, without the government punishing you, as long as you're not inciting violence or breaking other laws.
Right.
Yeah. So that's super important. And one of the great freedoms that we have in these United States, and we're thankful for that. But what about when the government tries to censor the free speech of its citizens?
Right.
That's the other side of the coin. And that's actually happened a few times recently. So we're going to look at that, and this will not be an exhaustive study on every single thing that's happened in the last few years, and certainly not all the presidents. But as people know, the last 2 presidents come from very different political points of view, and yet I think we will show pretty convincingly that they have both either been guilty of violating free speech or threatening to violate or censor free speech, is what I'm trying to say. So let's start with our current president, which would be, I guess, the most recent president.
The most recent, yep.
The precedent that the president tried to set. No, that's not really what I want to say. So I'm going to go right to the article from USA Today. In that, they reported that in a September 18th gaggle with reporters, which is just a meeting with reporters, a press meeting, aboard Air Force One as he flew back to the United States from the United Kingdom, President Trump said regarding the media, quote, "They're 97% against. They give me only bad publicity or press. I mean, they're getting a license. I would think maybe their license should be taken away. It will be up to Brendan Carr," end quote. And of course, Brendan Carr, well, Hillary, you tell us who that is.
Right. He's the head of the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, and he was appointed by President Trump.
Right.
So according to the New York Post, Brendan Carr has faced bipartisan backlash since last week when he told podcaster Benny Johnson, quote, "We can do this the easy way or the hard way. These companies can find ways to change conduct and take action, frankly, on Kimmel, or there's going to be additional work for the FCC ahead," end quote.
Yeah, so really that was a thinly veiled threat that the FCC would get involved, presumably with fines or the cancellation of licenses if content like what Jimmy Kimmel had said continued. Now, I did a pretty deep dive into this, and I didn't write all of it down. It gets a little crazy, but some of the parent companies that are involved here are trying to get some really big deals approved,
Right.
and they need FCC approval
Right.
for that. And so some people feel like, well, let's go on. Talking about what Jimmy Kimmel had said. All right. So
Right.
what did he actually say?
All right, well, here's this from the New York Post. It says, Kimmel's odd comments on Monday riled Carr, not only for mocking conservatives as they mourned Kirk's assassination,
Yeah.
but also seeming to imply a misleading narrative that his assassin was conservative himself.
Yeah.
Quote, "We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang." Oh, I should back this up. This is what Jimmy Kimmel said.
Yes.
So this is Jimmy Kimmel's quote. Quote, "We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it," end quote.
Yeah, so this was during Kimmel's monologue, which is usually when late show or, night show hosts do the monologue. Usually they're trying to be funny. I think most people already know that, but I'm just trying to come at this as objectively as possible. Kimmel's comments weren't funny. It wasn't funny. And sometimes you see hosts address something more serious and give their opinions about it. And I think they should have the right to do that. I remember David Letterman did that after 9/11, and I thought it was very poignant. But in this case, it was as if Kimmel, was still kind of attacking the right, which he does all the time, and he thinks it's funny, and they have people in the audience who think it's funny. Freedom of speech. But
Well, can I say funny is an opinion?
But it is. Right.
It's an opinion.
But this wasn't funny, and people there knew it wasn't funny. And not only that, his comments weren't true. So not a lot was really known about the shooter at this point, but you don't shoot someone if you're a fan of theirs. Mm-hmm. And most
Right.
MAGA supporters knew who Charlie Kirk was, and they knew that he and Trump were friends, and they were kind of on the same side politically. And a Trump supporter, a MAGA person, would have no reason to want to hurt Charlie Kirk. And so for these reasons, Kimmel's comments seemed calloused, unnecessarily mean, and frankly, a little unhinged. I mean, it certainly didn't pass the smell test in terms of being a true statement.
Right. I mean, it just objectively, it didn't make sense.
Right.
It didn't. Yeah. But again, to what I was going to say, just because you have a twisted sense of humor, right, in our opinion, maybe doesn't mean that it wasn't, quote, funny. Because again, in free speech, funny is an opinion.
Yeah, but I don't think anybody on any side thought it was funny. I heard a lot of liberal people saying that what he said was inappropriate and stupid and he shouldn't have said it. So you're right. Humor in basic terms is funny. I haven't found anybody yet. I've been reading a lot of stuff. I've learned a lot of dumb things.
Right,
Some I
right.
agreed with, some I didn't. Some that I didn't agree with that were well written and intelligent, just a different perspective than mine. And some that were downright ridiculous and stupid. Nobody thought what Jimmy Kimmel said was funny that I've seen. Maybe they exist, but that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Well, and so moving on from there,
Yeah.
as far as freedom of speech, Kimmel's bosses do have the right to suspend or fire him, even if they don't like what he says, or even if they don't care, but maybe they're just worried about blowback from viewers.
Right.
So that's part of the free market. Kimmel probably maybe got too comfortable. He quit thinking about common sense and common decency for other humans. But absolutely, your employer has the right to discipline you for your actions.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
that wasn't a freedom of speech so much as it was, wow, we're your boss. We're going to have a little review here. You don't pass the test.
Right. Right. So he was suspended indefinitely, and I kind of got ahead of myself earlier, but the parent companies of ABC, which is Disney, and I forget the other one, I didn't write it down, but they've got these big deals coming up. One of them's trying to get a big NFL contract. There's another one that I think is kind of a takeover, but they all need FCC approval. And so some people said that Jimmy Kimmel got fired or suspended because of pressure from Trump and Brendan Carr, which, yeah, is very possible. Also, indirectly, because his bosses need Brendan Carr's approval for their big deals to go through. And so they were afraid that might not happen. So they did that. And then after he was suspended indefinitely, which is kind of vague, and people were like, well, what does that mean? And nobody really explained it. But then public opinion, really from both sides of the political aisle, went against Trump and Carr. Maybe not totally, especially from the right, but at least for their meddling with free speech.
Right.
They said, no, look, we're not trying to just be on your team no matter what you do or say. You got to follow the rules, and you're not following the rules of free speech. You can't say that. Yeah, and there's been a lot. I said this isn't going to be a full discussion of this topic with all the presidents. This isn't even a full discussion of this topic because so much happened. We just can't cover it all.
And probably so much happened behind the scenes that we will never know about.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Probably not. Pam Bondi said some stuff that she really shouldn't have said about the difference between free speech and hate speech, and we just don't have time to get into all of it. But as we're preparing for this podcast, it's just been announced that Jimmy Kimmel will return to the air on Tuesday night. So Tuesday, September 23rd, 2025, if you're watching this in the future, he's been suspended for about a week. And it's been announced that he's going to go back on the air, where this podcast will drop on Wednesday, but we're recording it on Monday. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes when Kimmel gets back on the air. But yeah.
Right. Well, and in terms of government interference, I just feel like we think that Trump and Carr should not be threatening free speech, even if they're appalled by it. A statement could be released announcing someone else's statement, but if free speech laws aren't violated, then stay out of it.
Yeah. It sounded like you said announcing.
Announcing.
A statement could be released denouncing.
Denouncing. Yes.
Yeah, someone else's statement. But
I would like to announce your statement for you. Yeah. Denouncing someone else's statement.
Right. So I just want to make sure we're clear on all of that. But free speech says it's got to be free, even if you don't like it. So,
Right.
But then there is a thing called defamation. And so defamation is not protected. We didn't really cover defamation last week. So I wanted to dive into that a little bit because I think that applies to some of what we're talking about here. The following information is from JD Supra, Supra, if you want to look it up. JD Supra is an online platform that serves as a daily source of legal and business intelligence, providing news, articles, commentary, and alerts from leading lawyers and law firms on a wide range of topics, which is pretty cool. I didn't know that existed until I was researching for this episode, and I'm not a lawyer, so.
I am not one either. All right, so we looked up what is defamation.
On that site.
On that site. And so it says defamation involves the publication of false statements that harm the reputation of a person or even a business, either through libel, which is written, or slander, which is spoken.
Right.
So if you want to distinguish between free speech and defamation, the key to distinguishing free speech from defamation lies in whether the statement is found to be an opinion or fact.
Right.
So opinions are protected by free speech, while false statements of fact are not.
Exactly. So, Hillary, why don't you give us an example of an opinion?
All right, here I go. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. I think this restaurant is terrible.
Thankfully, I haven't heard that too many times when we've been out to eat. So contrast that with defamation.
Okay, so that was purely an opinion, right?
Yes.
Defamation would say, this restaurant uses rotten meat in its dishes. So in the case of the first one, that's just your opinion. The person next to you might think this restaurant is wonderful.
Yep.
You have your reasons, they have theirs. But the statement, this restaurant uses rotten meat in its dishes, if it's false, this is, I don't even know if I could say that, defamatory.
Yeah, defamatory.
Because it asserts false statements as fact. You can prove this or disprove this.
Well, you notice both of those statements are negative. So I think
Right.
this restaurant is terrible. If a friend of mine says that, and I was thinking about going to restaurant A for a meal, and he says, "Oh, restaurant A is terrible, man. You don't want to go there." Then I'll probably skip it because I trust my friend's opinion, but it's just his opinion, and I know that. But if somebody says, like you said, that they're using rotten meat, well, that's negative, but it's also stated as a fact. So if you say something as a fact, but it's a lie, that's defamation.
Right. That is not protected.
Yeah. And you kind of have to know that it's a lie. I mean, I guess unless you're just repeating something somebody else says, but I think if it comes out of your mouth, you're still responsible for it. So,
Yeah.
all right. So that's free speech and defamation. Don't tell lies about people that are negative because it may come back to bite you in the legal system. I'd like to look at something that happened with our president before this. Of course, President Joe Biden, he created his, You're
doing great.
Thanks. His administration created something called the Disinformation Governance Board. All right. So this was supposed to protect the American people from lies. I thought it was a little insulting that none of us could tell the difference. But anyway, one of the roles of government is to protect the people, and that's, what they were saying. We're going to protect the American people, but by telling them, by keeping disinformation away from them. But what actually happened was it was mostly used as a censorship bureau to share public information which reflected the administration's views and to suppress information which did not. In other words, it was the opposite of free speech.
Well, and it was likened by some to the, quote, Ministry of Truth in George Orwell's dystopian novel 1984. Yeah. And it was disbanded shortly thereafter.
Did you read 1984?
I don't think that I did. If I did, it was in high school, and we all know how many decades ago that was. But I think I would like to read it again.
Yeah, I read it in high school, and of course I don't remember it as well as if I'd read it last week. But I mean, it really had an impact on me. I was like, this is crazy.
Right.
And what was interesting, I graduated high school in 1983. I didn't look up when this was written, but it was written a long time before 1984. So it was like this futuristic, this is what could happen if government gets out of control. And then when I read it, of a couple of years, I think I read it as a sophomore or junior, a couple of years before 1984, I was like, well, I don't think all this is going to happen this fast. And of course, being a little bit naive, I just thought it's never going to happen. People won't let that happen. But then here comes Biden with the disinformation governance board, and he's trying to tell people what's true and what's not. And so that got shut down pretty quick. Another thing the Biden administration did was they leaned on social media companies in order to suppress ideas and reports that did not fit the administration's policies and or opinions. This was actually testified to by Mark Zuckerberg, who most of you probably know who that is, CEO of Meta Platforms and the co-founder of Facebook. So a couple pretty big no-nos for the Biden administration.
So it seems like whether you are red or blue, there is a point where you're trying to shut down the other side.
You don't like it when people say things you don't agree with, and you just want to do something about it.
And I think one of the problems that I would like to bring up is that we need to be very careful as Americans that we're not interested in freedom of speech when it's just our guys. Mm-hmm. So if your guys are saying things and you're like, yeah, that's great, but we're going to shut down the other guys, that is not good.
Right.
You don't want the other guys to get shut down because pretty soon you will be the other guys. Yeah. It's going to go back and forth. We're going to take turns, and we just can't keep shutting each other down. That's just not going to work.
Well, it's crazy. And one of the things I've noticed about human behavior is if my guy, excuse me, really struggling with my throat today. If my guy says something that, and I like my guy, then even if it comes off a little crazy, it's easy to be like, it's fine. It's whatever.
I trust him.
Yeah. But if the guy I don't like says something and it's about it's just about the same amount of
crazy,
disjointed or crazy or whatever, you're like, oh, they're terrible. Look what they said. The people that you like, you give them the benefit of the doubt. And the people that you don't like, you don't give them any slack whatsoever. And I think that's unfortunate. And I think we as a nation should try, well, as individuals, if we all do it, then maybe as a nation we can improve, to try to be objective and to understand that nobody's perfect. But if somebody's doing something that's out of bounds, we should say, hey, no, we don't want that to be okay. We don't want them to get away with that, even if it's our guy. Like, I don't want my guy to get fired, but I don't want him to be getting away with that either, because you have to understand the full big picture that if my guy gets away with it, then when your guy's in charge again, he's going to be allowed to get away with it too. And that's not a road that we want to go down.
If it's not right, it's not right.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree.
Exactly. Well, I thought this would be a good place to, we had a lot of quotes from the last episode, and I wanted to repeat this one by Noam Chomsky. If we don't believe in freedom of expression for people we despise, we don't believe in it at all. That kind of goes along with everything I just said. And then I kind of took that and fashioned it slightly differently and said freedom of speech is only free if everybody gets to have it.
I like that. I like that. And the other thing too, I was reading a book this summer, and they went through and did a pretty exhaustive explanation about the media companies and where we get our information. And this is all day long. If you're in the grocery store and you're seeing branding on a cereal or on a toy or the bread, like, branding is everywhere. It's all day long. Yeah. It's when you're scrolling, it's when you're driving, it's on the billboards. And when you talked about these parent companies and these mergers. Mm-hmm. There used to be laws that separated, used to be newspaper and television. So there used to be laws saying how much of the market you could control.
Okay.
Well, things changed through the years, and the laws changed, and you were allowed to merge companies, and your areas got bigger and bigger. And so this book was published, I think, in 2020 or 2021. And at that point, when they showed you all the different categories, they said that 90% of all the media that we see, it originates from only 6 sources.
Wow.
So if you think about that power, that only six separate entities are generating the agenda for 90% of all the media that you see, that is so powerful. So
They're probably all having lunch every Tuesday to make sure that
hey guys, let's stay on point.
stay on the same page so people think everything we say is true, even if it's not.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and so one of the things I think too is don't believe the lie that just because you keep hearing the same message that it's true. It's like, well, I mean, everybody's kind of saying this, so I mean, it must be true. No, it's true because everybody's owned by the same 6 sources. So it is difficult to hear different messages. And like we said before, I'm going to find a source that says things that I like to hear. I'm like, oh yeah, I line up with these guys. I think I'm going to listen to them. Well, I listen to them and they tell me all the things I want to hear. Well, I'm not hearing any other opinions.
Right.
And so, that's why you probably don't realize that all the things that maybe you're complaining about with our guy is the same thing that we were complaining about your guy. And like, everybody needs to know that there is other news out there. There is other thoughts.
Right.
Don't just settle on getting from that 90%. There's other thoughts out there.
Yeah.
And also, this is super important.
Okay.
You've heard me say this before. Anytime somebody is trying to stir up your anger and encourage you to hate your neighbor, that is a huge red flag.
Yeah.
You've got to stop and back up and say, hey, what's in it for them? Why do they want me so angry? Why do they want me to hate my neighbor?
Right.
Because last time I checked, Jesus said, love your neighbor. And he went a further step and said, love your enemies.
Yeah, I did.
So I'm all for free speech, but I'm also for loving your neighbor.
Yeah, and loving your enemy is definitely a tough one. But if we're supposed to love our enemy, then why are we getting so crazy, angry, and freaked out at everything?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there was a scripture I thought of also that kind of went along with this.
Okay.
And this one is from Proverbs 18:17, and it says, the one who states his case first seems right until the other comes and examines him.
Yeah.
And if you've ever watched kids on a playground, or every mom ever, when let's say one child comes to you and tells you their story, you could listen to that and say, oh, that's horrible. I can't believe that happened. Oh, I'm so glad you told me that. That's horrific. I'm so upset about this. Until the other student or child walks in the room and says their story, and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
I didn't realize that also happened.
Yeah.
So I think, as neighbors, maybe you don't agree with your neighbor. Maybe you have a different opinion as your neighbor. Hear each other out, because just because you're hearing one story doesn't mean that's the whole story. Someone else could come forward with more information, and you'll get the full picture, hopefully, or a better picture.
Right. Well, that's all really good stuff. There's some more wisdom in. I'm so sorry. Let me double check and make sure I didn't lose my spot here. Ephesians chapter 4, I think it's just verse 25, says, therefore each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to your neighbor, for we are all members of one body. So we talked a little bit about some comments not sounding true. I'm not trying to harp on that one story, but we've talked before on other episodes of our podcast about how important the truth is, and how in society today we've got, like my truth and your truth, and make sure and embrace your truth. And truth is truth is pretty objective, and Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. So those objective truths are a lot more important than everyone's opinions. But with regards to that, and with I'm just you came across some information, and then you made some charts, and I'm the one with the art degree, but you came up with some really jamming charts. I really like these, and so I'm just gonna stop stammering like I know what I'm talking about and let you introduce the charts, because we need to talk about these before we finish up for the day.
All right. We'll try to get through these. Thank you for the compliment. You're the one, you're the artist here, but I'm
not the only one, obviously.
Pretty dangerous on Canva, I'll tell you. So, okay. So I was talking with a friend one day, and he's also a believer in Jesus. And we were saying how difficult sometimes it can be to combine speaking the truth in love.
Right.
And he actually kind of drew this chart out for me. And if you look at the yellow arrow, this yellow arrow is going to represent love. And at the bottom, that would be 0 to, just a smidge of love. At the top, it's going to be a whole lot of love.
Yep.
So look at the blue arrow. This is going to be truth. And so on the left-hand side, that's going to be the least amount of truth, if any at all. And then as you move towards the right, truth is going to increase.
Right.
So we're going to go to the second chart, and we're going to look at this dot at the bottom right-hand corner.
So we're trying to decide where we are.
Right. So
where I am, where you are.
Right. Everybody finds themselves somewhere on this chart.
Yeah.
If you are this little dot on this second chart, this is going to be very little love if you look at the yellow arrow, but a lot of truth. A lot of truth, which truth is great.
I think I've met people like that.
I think you have. This corner is judgmental. These are the people that are telling you the truth.
Right.
But you don't feel loved.
They don't care about you as long as you know the truth. That's all that matters.
I think we've all heard somebody like this. And we don't really like to be around these people. But to be fair, what they're saying is true.
Yes.
So so the next chart, this dot is going to be in the lower left-hand corner.
Yep.
And this is going to be still very little love, if any, and very little truth, if any at all. And this corner is apathy. And you really don't want to find yourself in this category either.
That's a bad corner to be in.
It really is. And you don't want the people in your life to be speaking this way either. They really just don't care. Right. I don't love you, and I don't even love you enough to tell you the truth. I don't care. I am apathetic. So we don't want to be those people.
No.
And we don't want those people speaking into our life.
Nope.
The next chart is with the dot on the upper left-hand corner. So this is still going to be very low on truth, if any, but super high on love. And we know people like this too.
Yeah.
They love you. They love you so much. They want to tell you how much they love you.
They love love.
They love love. They love love. But they are not telling you the truth.
They might not even know the truth, unfortunately.
They might not. Or they've decided that loving you is more important than telling you the truth. So this one is a little tricky because it kind of feels good.
Yeah.
It does. In a lot of ways, it's like, oh, they love me. But do they really? Because they're not speaking the truth to you.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people are at that little dot, but it is not a good dot. And so this last chart, and you'll notice the circle turned into a heart.
Wow.
This is the goal. And this really has been my goal for a while. I've been trying to work on this. And this is where hopefully you would be speaking the truth, as best as you understand it, and you would be speaking it with as much love as you know how to do that. And that is the goal, that we would speak the truth in love. And I have to really say that this has convicted me, because I think I would have found myself maybe in the no love truth category where I knew the truth and I was going to say the truth. And I just feel like I really was convicted by the Lord just to say, but do you really love them? Are you really, you want to say this because you love them? Is that why you want to say it? And I thought, it's really not. I just want them to know the truth. And so I would just confess and say, I'm working on the balance between love and truth. That's my goal.
I mean, I've had it pretty much perfect the whole time, but
like everything else. It's just an honor to sit by you, Dave.
okay. We better hurry up and finish before I get smacked on camera. Ephesians 4:15 and 16 says, rather, speaking the truth in love, we are to grow up in every way into him who is the head, into Christ, from whom the whole body, joined and held together by every joint with which it is equipped, when each part is working properly, makes the body grow so that it builds itself up in love. I love the charts. Hillary, great
Thank
job.
you.
Good
Thanks.
explanation. And I think we all should be working towards being in that upper right corner to care about the truth, to speak the truth, but to do it in love and to treat people with love. It doesn't have to be sticky, sweet love. It doesn't have to be love with no truth, and it shouldn't be truth with no love, but to do both of those in a good balance. I think it can be difficult, but it's important. So as we wrap up, we just want to kind of hit some of the main points we had here. The Noam Chomsky quote was so good. If we don't believe in freedom of expression for people we despise, we don't believe in it at all. We need to make sure that the things that we say are true, and we need to say them in love.
That's right. And remember, freedom of speech is only free if everybody gets to have it. See ya.